Hey, welcome to Revisiting the Mania of WrestleMania Rewatch Podcast. I am Carlos,
And I'm Maria.
and today we are taking a trip or a side quest to do a movie review because it is Women's History Month, and
Ooh.
I want to get out there and watch things that interest me as well and that interest my wife
Yeah.
because, guys, if you haven't noticed, she's a woman. So so we went out and saw the Queen of the Ring, and we'll give our thoughts and reviews. And joining us is a longtime friend of the podcast, Raymond. Padilla.
Yo, I'm not sure which I was going for. It's like one
Right.
of
Long
those.
time.
As long as some people don't come looking for us because of all the signs you give up. So, Queen of the Ring, what do you have?
Queen of the Ring. Well, this movie just came out recently. We had the opportunity to see it over this past weekend. And again, thank you for joining us. As you know, I'm Maria, your local resident, or I don't know about local, but your mark in training. I really enjoyed watching this movie and I can't wait to get into it. We're diving, like Carlos said, into a film that really had me hyped. I was very excited, very surprised that the main actress
Cast the
or
lead.
the lead in this movie. This is a biographical sports drama that throws a spotlight and lots of respect on a wrestling pioneer, Mildred Burke. So this one's for every woman who's ever had to fight twice as hard to be seen, heard, and respected. Let's get into it.
All right. Well, Raymond, you have a little bit more time as far as like with wrestling, as we covered when we did our WrestleMania 1 show very, very long time ago, almost 2 years ago. But do you have anything that we might have missed from this movie about, or any like background that you're familiar with as far as with Mildred?
Not really, because like you, my experience with the older generation of women wrestlers was with Moolah and Mae Young.
Yeah.
So that's as far as back as I go. So I didn't really know much about these ladies until the documentary Lipstick and Dynamite, which I'm not sure when that came out, but that's when I learned more about some of the women in this film. A few of them are covered in that documentary. But I learned about this movie last year because I follow Emily Bett Rickards on Instagram.
What?
Yeah, and I was a fan of hers from the Arrow series on the CW. Carlos and I used to talk about that a lot.
I started watching The Arrow. I actually introduced Carlos to that. And I thought the first few seasons were excellent.
Oh, yeah.
Until it started getting like a little rom-commy for me.
Yeah. I was not an Olicity fan.
And that's where I started to, like you mentioned, Raymond, we heard about this movie probably already filming or being written about a year ago, and she started posting these her pictures of her transformation online, and I was like, really? They got Felicity. She's gonna play this. She's gonna play Mildred Burke,
right?
This lady who was primarily tech support for Oliver Queen, and a love interest towards the end of that
all of a sudden,
series.
he has these massive triceps in her photo.
Very strong.
But so that was my thing. Like Raymond, I watched a little bit of what we covered in the WrestleMania. That's how I primarily got to know. So any of the ladies I got to know growing up were, like you mentioned, Moolah, May, Leilani, Wendy Richter, and later Alundra Blaze Medusa.
Right.
So I didn't really have that much like background coming into it. So I was excited just because it's another wrestling movie. This is like maybe a little bit a year and some change after the Iron Claw movie that we got. So just being able to cover other content and know that there's more wrestling stories out there that we just need to uncover, that Dark Side of the Ring has probably not gotten into that much, because I believe they've only done the Moolah episodes only. They haven't got into, I guess this is considered kind of like a bright side, like positive news.
I think they
But
did a Sherry episode. Did they not?
they did.
Queen
If they did, I didn't get to see it or I haven't heard of it yet. But I know they were talking about it. But I'll have to get back to it.
So this movie was directed and written by Ash Avildsen, and I heard that he actually read this book about 10 years before and was inspired to write. I'm also kind of surprised because it looks like he's directed about 3 or 4 movies prior to this. The budget's about 555,000,
Ooh.
which nowadays seems to be pretty small on the scale of
Yeah.
like these multi-million,
Yeah.
big dollar, big budget movies. So like we said, Mildred Burke was the first female professional wrestling world champion. You'll talk about Moolah. That's what I was thinking as far as like historical wrestling from my viewpoint.
Right.
But she was wrestling in the 1930s and 1940s, which was really exciting to not only watch, see, and learn about.
Yeah. So, do you have anything else before we start like breaking into a little bit more of the meat of this or our thoughts and opinions of this movie, Raymond?
I love this movie both from an entertainment perspective, but also from an educational perspective, because there are a lot of wrestlers whose influence gets overlooked today. And Mildred Burke absolutely falls into the category. But this movie is also a reminder of how influential Gorgeous George was. And
Yes.
a lot of people forget that, you know, people look at flamboyant wrestlers like Ric Flair or flamboyant athletes like Muhammad Ali, but Gorgeous George inspired all those guys and then some, even some weird ones like Bob Dylan. Like he met Gorgeous George and Bob Dylan met once and he said something to him like, "You're doing it right, kid." And Bob Dylan said that like carried him for years. One line, I'm like,
That's
I did not know
awesome.
that, but that's cool. Yeah. So
Raymond, go ahead. Raymond mentioned Gorgeous George, so I just wanted to put a picture up there of Gorgeous George. It was played by some Aussie, some guy down under, and this is his big motion picture debut too.
Yeah.
And he is gorgeous. Look at those locks, his outfit. And according to this movie, he was inspired by Mildred.
Yeah, and well, that's what we have this thing where we're gonna get into some of this, some of the things introduced, like the banner says wrestling accuracy. So that's where me and Raymond kind of know a little bit of more things, and you know maybe you saw something when you were doing your research.
Okay.
But I know for sure the one thing I want to point out is that they have this, and spoilers if you haven't watched it. For that, and you know, we can't give you a proper review from wrestling fans' perspectives without having to show you a couple of scenes and get into a little bit of the details. But we have this thing that I want to bring up where there's a lady wrestler that unfortunately loses her life after she's been reporting dizziness, headaches, and things along those lines. And the movie, she's played by Deborah Ann Woll, who people would know her from True Blood, most recently the Daredevil show when it was on Netflix, and currently now on Disney Plus.
Yes.
And she plays
Gladys Gillum.
Gladys Gillum. Yes, thank you. Gillum. And the reason why I wanted to bring this up is because, as Raymond mentioned, there's a documentary out there called Lipstick and Dynamite, which premiered either in 2004, 2005. The timing's kind of off on that. And she was primarily the main speaker of the documentary.
Mm-hmm.
So
she did not die.
Yes, she did not die of a stroke.
Well, she did die. I don't mean.
Well, I mean,
not immortal.
Yeah, she did die in the
eventually,
like in the 2000s.
Yeah, I think she was
of old age.
Yeah, she was 89 or something like that.
Yes.
She got pretty far up.
She had a full life. She had 3 kids. She lived with one of them, as you saw in the documentary, Lipstick and Dynamite. And yeah, that's the only thing I want to bring up here, just because there are some producers, especially one that has 50 years plus in the business.
Right.
I'm talking about good old JR, if people haven't gotten or may have not looked at that. And if he's been in the business for that long, he should have been one of the ones to be able to catch this and be like, hey, we can't put this out there. We need to change the name. We can't say.
I don't know. I mean, it's a movie. It says
But
based on
you
a true story.
based on a true story, so it's like now you have to question which part is true and which part isn't.
Right. But I mean, I've come to an understanding about this with movies, starting with
Creative.
Moneyball,
Okay.
about the Oakland A's. And I lived in San Francisco at the time, and I went to a lot of A's games because they were cheap and nobody else went. They used to have dollar ticket, dollar hot dog days
I remember
on
this.
Wednesdays. So I was there for the Moneyball period, and so many things in the movie are so inaccurate. Movies like The Social Network, even The Iron Claw. So there've been so many movies that are based on a true story that they get Hollywood with it. Yeah, it used to piss me off more, but then Hollywood has kind of battered me into submission. I'm like, okay, this is how it's done. I don't know.
Oh, I'm still gonna fight the good fight, Raymond, because
Somebody should. Somebody needs
this
to.
lady wrestler lived a very long time, and she did have managed to go ahead and have some children. So
Yes.
I'm also sad that her estate didn't like. If they watched this movie, they haven't bothered to bring it up. But that's one of my things about this. Do you have anything, Maria?
Well, I like the premise. So the premise of this movie is we have a small town waitress with a very solid relationship with her mother that becomes interested in wrestling, and she ends up wrestling men. It's a great picture.
At carnivals. Yeah.
At carnivals, like out of all the things. And so she goes to traveling carnivals. She's wrestling for what is it, about $25?
I think it's from whatever the person wants to bet. From what I know, or from what I gathered from what the movie was explaining to us, because they pay an entrance fee, the audience, to get in there. So now you have gate money, and then you have people that you plant on there to get like the ball going. So people get courage, like, well, this lady lost me, I'm better than that lady, and then they bet whatever money that they want to throw up.
Yeah, so like the premise of the movie itself, small town waitress ends up being like a global wrestling sensation.
But you see, that's already inaccurate because she was not a waitress when she met Billy Burke. She was she was
Billy
like
Burke?
a secretary or something.
She was a secretary?
Yeah. She was a waitress before. A stenographer. So she had those like mini typewriter things.
Okay. Well, small town waitress, stenographer.
She absolutely was a waitress in the movie, though. So
yeah,
it's another Hollywood. Fight that one, Carlos.
Okay, I'm gonna fight for that one too. Because did she become a stenographer because she was helping out in World War I or something like that?
Sure. I think
how she became a stenographer, but
I just like the idea in such a time where there are so many restrictions on what a woman could do and couldn't do.
Right.
She was bold enough to make those moves and take those chances. A single mom, she had a son, who we get to see throughout this movie. We get to see that strong support that she has for her son and how her son supports her towards the back end of this movie. So I like the premise of the movie. And thought that was pretty interesting. And I thought out of when I was like, oh, this is the actress that we're picking, I think she did a really good job showing that love, not only for her mother, but also for her son and the other wrestlers throughout this movie as well.
That's awesome. Do you
have aside, what did you think of the casting of her mother? Because numerically, yes, that could be her mother, but the way they looked on, what did you have her when you were 8? Because they didn't look that far apart in age to me. I don't know.
That was one of the things I was gonna bring up, Raymond. But the reason I didn't do it is because I have to remember that this movie is taking place in the beginning, like in the mid-30s.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, you're right.
So it could be one of those things where she could have had her young, like at 14 or 15.
Right.
And so the mom is probably like in her late 30s, early 40s. But that was something that I had picked up just because I'm so used to everything being more modern when we're watching movies. And I'm like, I have to remember this is the 30s.
Right.
So I was like, I was going to bring that up, but I held off on it because of that.
And you're right. So I thought the casting was fine. I had no issues with the mom and daughter. And to my understanding, I think she's 33 right now as her current age.
Emily.
So I was kind of surprised. I guess she was in her 20s when she was in
Arrow.
Arrow.
That had to be like really early 20s then.
Yep.
So
So
Raymond, did you have anything that you wanted to point out besides the age discrepancy between Emily, Mildred, and her mother?
No, I mean it just looked funny to me visually, but that's a great point about that time period. As far as accuracies go, they did show how abused and exploited Mildred was, but that's just scratching the surface. This woman had it tough to the point where she was mentally breaking down for being shut out of what she wanted to do for a living. So they could have done. I understand that it has to be. They can't get into a morose, depressing thing for what's supposed to be an uplifting, positive movie.
Right.
But yeah, if you want to learn more about Mildred Burke, and I think it's well worth going into, this woman went through a ton to succeed.
She did. I heard she used to carry a wrench around with her or pliers because of the situations that she would get into with men while she was doing her work.
Mm-hmm.
So like Raymond said, if you have the opportunity, definitely look into it. You'd want to say that we're here in 2025 and that things would be so much different from the way that they are then. But
Well, we're
at
going
times,
back now.
yeah, I mean,
You're gonna have no rights in 5 years, Maria.
I agree with you. That's what I'm saying. I think this is a perfect time for this movie to come out because you see what women have to endure and deal with. And what I was saying is that you'd like to say that, oh, this was in the 30s and 40s, and we've come such a long way. But here we are in 2025, still dealing with these same situations and scenarios. So I thought this was a good glimpse of some of the things that women had to deal with. For example, getting married, so she'd have a stake in the business, and she secured her and her son's future and a share of that money, which we'll talk about a little bit later on because that ends up changing for her as well. But this was just a really good movie and a really good watch and perfect timing with all the things that we're going through at this point. So,
all right.
You want to talk about the cast?
Yeah, I'm gonna go ahead and get into it because that is part of the storytelling. So I got a good group picture here. So we mentioned Karen Page. Karen Page. Gladys Gillum. Yeah, all the way to I believe this is the right if you're viewing it over here with the yellow top and the black bottoms.
No, I
and
see it as left.
Okay. All right. Thank you. But however, the red head with the bright greenish yellowish top and the black bottoms, it's Gladys Sharon or Gladys Gillum, and then the middle with the zebra stripe bikini ensemble is Mildred. The one with the red bikini is is well known if you're a wrestling fan. Because or watch wrestling shows, especially the one called the one Heels that was on Stars and it's currently on Netflix. Because Kelly Berglund is the one that plays who's
Crystal.
also in this Crystal, and she plays Nell in this movie. I forgot her last name. Sorry about that. And then we have Babs Wingo over here, which is one of the. She was the first She was the first woman of color to break into the business of lady wrestling, and her sister Ethel Wingo becomes the first woman of color to hold the championship, and that's played by Naomi or Trinity Fatu, who is currently a WWE talent. And she did not get featured that much in this movie, but she does have billing in the movie and here as well. Another lady that we have that is currently a wrestler, besides the one mentioned there, is the timeless one, Tony Storm.
Yeah.
and she plays an antagonist for Mildred as she's trying to go ahead and break into the National Wrestling Alliance to become their champion. But she goes against Carla Mortensen, is who Tony Storm plays, and they end up having this disagreement with the bookers, who brought Mildred over as someone to challenge Carla, but had thought that they had an agreement where they were going to have Mildred win the belt, and that wasn't going to be the case, unfortunately. And eventually, they have. I guess they bring it up there where they have a shoot match. Now, have you ever getting into that, Raymond? Have you ever heard that actual term that had to happen?
A shoot match.
A shoot match. Okay. For those that are newer to wrestling and new fans like Maria, is like a shoot is pretty much it, where it's no longer part of the story. It's no longer part of the agreement. It's now this is for real. You know, I'm gonna either hit you or hurt you or do something to get your attention because something's either going off script or this is going not how we agreed.
So, right. And usually the wrestlers were the ones that had to pay for, like in this situation, if the bookers had a disagreement, then the wrestlers were the ones that would have to suffer for that disagreement by doing a shoot, whether they wanted to or not.
Right. So we have that one, and that's how they end up taking the belts back and forth from each other. And then another wrestler that we have here, she is an AEW, but I'm not sure what her current contract is.
Is she still? I thought
that's what they're. Go ahead, Raymond.
I thought she was dropped.
Well, that's the thing, is nobody knows. She's avoided saying it on TV. So maybe she's not happy with her booking, and you know how Tony's been holding off people, you know, who have been saying not nice things in the media about like their ring time or the way their storylines are going or things along those lines. So maybe she's just playing it nice but not saying anything so she can get out of her contract earlier and not have to worry in limbo like
say her name,
you know, like Phoenix and Penta. But this is Camille. The Brickhouse Camille is her moniker. She was the first she was the first champion after Billy Corgan, who now owns the National Wrestling Alliance, bought the belt that Mildred had throughout the whole run of her championship when Mildred was a champion, Mildred Burke.
I wonder how much she paid for it.
I'm sure we could find that out.
I know. I'm just curious.
The notes, but yeah, she ended up wearing that belt, the same belt that Mildred had and more, and it has a little picture of Mildred in that belt, cool. And it's still currently around in NWA.
Yeah.
So both Camille and Tony use their real names in the credits, which I thought was interesting, without like parentheses to their characters.
Yeah, it was fun to see because I'm not sure if that's her maiden name because she's married to what's that guy's name?
Yeah, that guy.
Oh, it's gonna kill me.
Did you all talk about
Tony Rosal?
Trinity Fatu?
Yeah, we just talked about her. Okay, she was the sister of Babs Wingo, Ethel Wingo. I think her married name because of Ethel Johnson.
I wish she would have had a part that was a little bit more fleshed out.
And
I think that was a problem with the end of this movie as well, is that we had so many characters introduced to us in such a short period of time.
Yeah.
I would have liked to have seen more from her and several of the ladies that we were introduced to. So when we're talking about this, you know, cast, because they definitely brought the heat during this movie, you're talking about current day wrestlers that are wrestling today. But we talked a lot about Emily Bet Records, of course, because she's the show. She's Mildred Burke. We also have Josh Lucas as Billy Wolf, who is a great actor, her promoter, and her manipulative, I can't say that word.
Manipulative.
There we go, husband.
And abusive.
And abusive for sure, you know, mentally, physically. The tension in the beginning was like very interesting. And of course, that broke down as we see throughout this movie as things kind of deteriorate between their relationship.
Yeah.
We have Tyler Posey, he plays an ally, and he's adding, you know, like that kind of wholesome layer to Burke's world. Walter Goggins
Who's
as,
pictured here in the middle.
you know,
For those who are watching, and he was one of the people who, a wrestling promoter who helped out Mildred after she split with her husband slash manager, Billy Wolf, who's pictured here next to Camille. So this is when they're trying to reconcile to have a match because Mildred has the belt, and at this point in time, they're divorced, Mildred and Billy, but no one wants to recognize Billy's promotion as the one that has the true champion because everyone recognizes Mildred as being the true champion. So right here, they're trying to negotiate one final match to have a true champion, which would be Mildred versus June Byers.
right. And this is one of my favorite scenes in the movie, because it shows how strong a character Burke is, where she had to go through the situation, deal with her ex-husband, deal with these promoters, talk to the audience, still, you know, lift those muscles like she did, which again, the original Mildred and this character that's playing her, very strong. Um, and some of the wrestling that I watched from these old school reels show how strong these ladies were. And also how I think their technical moves were pretty good. Like they're great.
Yeah.
Technical wrestling, you know, great. These women are strong. Personalities are great. Also, I heard one of the announcers say we have pinups in the ring doing pin downs, which is, you know, just like one of the standards at the time where the women had to look gorgeous, be well dressed, and also like very strong and ready to wrestle and be tough in the ring. So,
And that's just something that ends up being weird to me because from like the few videos that Maria pulled up of Mildred, like maybe they're not as long, like 3 minutes, 4 minute films or whatever that they're edited. Like these women are doing more than what I remember, like women doing from the 80s to like the early 2000s.
Right.
And Vince's territory,
Right.
Vince Jr. So it's like, it's amazing, but it's also disappointing because you figure that how we have now the women's divas or the women's revolution that we had with the four horsewomen, that should have come a lot sooner. Maybe it's because we didn't have the talent, but it's just disappointing that it just ended up going to where we had these women going around either living the kayfabe and doing like plotted out matches and choreographed things like that, or having the shoot matches, which I hear happened a lot more than it did with the men. So it's interesting, but like I said, it's disappointing because we have from like this maybe like the late 70s to like I mentioned the early 2000s, like 20 plus 25 years plus of where we just had, I guess, mediocre wrestling here in the United States because I'm not sure what was happening overseas in Japan because as the movie tells us later on, Mildred is one of the pioneers that ends up promoting wrestling all over the world, not just in the United States, but she goes off to Mexico, she goes off to Australia and Japan, where she helps start the All Japan Wrestling Federation, the women's side there, and then eventually when she passes or maybe she reaches a little bit of money issues, I kind of forget, but All Japan ends up buying out the World Women's Wrestling Alliance, which is the wrestling federation that Mildred ended up making when she separated from her husband Billy Wolf.
Did you take any screens of the woman that played May Young?
I forgot to take a screenshot of that one of Francesca Eastwood.
Yes. and it is, yes, that Eastwood family. So she is the
Mhm.
daughter of Clint.
Yes,
Really?
and the guy who is it? The guy Scott, right? Scott Eastwood too, or
I
something
had no
like
Um,
that.
idea.
I don't remember.
She was great as Mae Young. Also a gorgeous actress. I had no idea that she was Clint Eastwood's
It
daughter.
doesn't look any good thing.
No.
She
Oh,
doesn't look
yeah.
it.
But
But
there are several times I was looking at her because I don't really know her from anything else, but I'm like, who is this like budget Amanda Seyfried that they
What?
I
That's
did. Yes,
rude. She's
thank
gorgeous in her
you. I
own
was
way.
thinking about that
Excuse
too.
me. Also, Clint Eastwood, definitely handsome in his day. I miss those movies too, so I'm gonna have to rewatch some of them.
Mhm.
Grew up watching those with my dad and my uncles.
But
So
I did like
as
that May got a spotlight because she's also another one of the most influential women in wrestling. And they alluded to it in the movie that she was like legitimately one of the toughest women around. So I like that they gave her that nod too.
Yeah, because when I was doing my research too, that's all that it kept coming across is that May was a really tough lady, and she ended up really picking fights with sailors and other people and bar fights.
That's just cool.
is.
She
That's
was
awesome.
she was Meng before Meng was cool.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then just to see her still wrestling, where I was introduced to her, like through WWE, I'm like, she was still pulling those moves well into her, what, 70s, 80s?
And she was going through tables, scared the
Yeah.
hell out of me. I'm like, I think Bubba just killed her.
I remember that.
Yeah, so that's one of the things that you get to like now since I've been taking you down the rabbit holes of WrestleManias and into wrestling history. Now you get to have a little bit more of a connection when
Right.
we're talking about
So she's
things like
not
this.
not just the woman that gave birth to a hand. It's
I
like,
know.
Yeah.
It's such a crazy storyline.
Oh, Mark Henry.
I
Oh,
mean,
man.
that's what a lot of the younger generation knows her from, and that's totally understandable. But I hope
Mhm.
that this movie inspires them to look at these women like Mildred and Mae Young and learn more about them.
Yeah, and I'm also hoping that this movie review, if people get to watch it, inspires people to go out and watch this movie. Though we kind of like spoil little things from here and there, but even though we're talking about it and we're critiquing this movie, it's still to me something that still should go out and watch.
Yeah.
And if you made it this far and you're still watching our content, please don't forget to give us a like,
Subscribe,
subscribe,
comments,
share with your friends.
like us,
Yeah.
Oh wait, let's see if this works. Yes.
heart us.
License.
Is it
Uh,
wrong?
There it
yeah,
is.
it works for him because he has a
Oh,
Mac.
that's so cute. Oh my
I could do all
goodness.
kinds of cool things.
What?
Work.
Oh, we're done. There you go.
Wow.
God.
What?
What? The future, everybody.
The future. Yeah, so visually to me this film was a knockout. I love all the clothing
Yeah.
from the time,
Yeah.
the vehicles, the places that they stood.
Yeah. Just
Um,
the decor was yeah. Just I love all the little touches like that.
Mhm.
yeah. We had tight camera angles, the sound. Um, the Did you know that Kat Von D actually sang a song
No.
for the soundtrack?
No.
Yeah, the soundtrack to this movie, which is okay. Maybe they couldn't get the rights to it because, like we mentioned, this is a 550,000 budget
Yeah.
movie. But they had Kat Von D. I don't know who ever heard Kat Von D sing, but they have her do the House of the Rising Sun.
Oh wow.
Cover.
Yeah.
And let me tell you guys, don't go out and listen to it, please.
or go out and listen to
Or
it.
if you are a fan of Camp Von D, sure, go ahead if you haven't listened to it. But yeah, save your ear holes for
Save your ear holes for other things.
yes, definitely.
Okay.
And the only thing that I can say here for me that I was kind of disappointed is as far as like the storytelling aspect. So we have Ash Avildsen, who's son of John Avildsen, who produced and directed Rocky and The Karate Kid.
Okay.
and I expected something kind of like in those beats where you have like the slow rise, you get the knockdown of the hero, and then you get the the overcoming of that obstacle.
I think we got
And
that.
but it just seemed like you got a slow rise. It just seemed, for me, it seemed like a little bit too long in the beginning. I don't know if it was just me, or it's like the pacing was kind of off. Like we felt, I'm not sure what it was, but that was my only thing. And I hear there's a 3-hour cut of this movie.
Oh wow, I'd watch that.
Yeah,
So
I
I
would
would be interested in watching that too. But who knows when it's gonna happen? If it's gonna happen after it hits streaming, and then later on after it's killed that, they're like, hey, now you got to go out and see the director's cut, which is 3 hours. Because I want to see if they add more of Mula besides pic or like that one frame of her in the ring.
Yeah, I don't. That's a tough one to touch because so many stories about how she used to exploit the other women are out now.
It's
But
true, yeah,
but
but I would just to have her there just to see, because she and Mildred
yeah,
are women that end up having their own promotions.
They are.
So just to like have to see that Mula was not only trained by Mildred and in with Billy, but also inspired to go ahead and actually have her own promotion too. I'm not saying you have to focus it on her, but it's nice to know that she not only probably inspired other women later on, but she actually did inspire someone even to help get more of the main WWE only audience. They're like make that connection, like, oh, this is Mula. Mula was trained by her and things like that. So that's the only reason I would like to see something like that. Also, just to see Mickey James. She's the
yeah.
one that is credited to as playing Mula on here.
Mm-hmm.
All right. So with that, we'll get to
Ray's like, no Mula for me.
yeah. Ray's like, no.
No,
Mula,
I
but
mean, even WWE is trying to like erase some of her history. So I get why she was, swept aside in this movie. I'm not sure it would have added things from historical accuracy standpoint, but
Right.
in terms of being a movie, I kind of feel closer to Maria in terms of the pacing, and that I did feel it was similar to like the Rocky and the Karate Kid arcs, and that it's very much a glossed over tale, because even though at the end of the movie you feel inspired that, oh yeah, Mildred was totally triumphant, that's really not kind of how it ended for her. Then she still had a lot more troubles and a lot more struggles after that. But it's again like it's a Hollywood thing. They do it with everything based on a true story, because sometimes the true stories are more depressing than what they want to tell.
All right.
Mhm.
Especially like the claw. But like with this one, like you're saying, is like we do see her rise up from learning how to wrestle, building up that
Mhm.
muscle, getting competitive, and then setting up their business together. And we see her go through these multiple fights and like literally and those are just the two that we know of. So who knows how many fights she got into with her spouse and business manager at the time, Billy Wolf. And she was making, what was it, like millions of dollars for the
Yeah.
time. So
Mhm.
she's the first woman athlete to make at least $1 million. Again, owning her own promotion. And then when they got divorced, she left with nothing. And so she had to rebuild herself back up one more time. So we see some of the women that left with her originally had to leave for financial reasons, because they were being offered more money under
With
other
Billy.
promotions. So I thought that was pretty interesting.
Random question for you about
Yeah.
Emily Bett Rickard's performance, which I thought was great overall, but
Yeah.
sometimes in the more dramatic scenes where the speaking voices, the volume turned up, I'm like, wait, what happened to your accent? Like all of a sudden you sound like Felicity now.
Yeah.
You had a southern accent like 5 minutes ago.
Yeah.
Yeah, there were parts that were painful to hear. And I guess because I watched The Arrow for so long, I see Felicity in her character.
Hmm.
So there were a lot of points that she nailed for me, a lot of things that she did well. And like you said, during some of the most dramatic scenes that were a little awkward for me were with Billy's son. Who is
Yeah.
it? Ash?
Billy Jr., but
Billy
G-Bill.
Jr.
G Bill, yeah.
G-Bill. So his character was like very cringy to me through this whole movie.
Yes. Did you
And
see a picture of what he really looked like? Even
yes,
creepier. Yeah.
I was like, yes. So it was really hard for me to watch his character throughout this movie because he was so cringe and his stature was like bent over, hunched over, and he was just like such a small character, which I get it because your father figure is so large,
Right.
larger than life, and crushing his spirit like consistently throughout this movie is what we're seeing. And then the plot twist for me was that he ends up having one of the other wrestlers getting married to his son because the son was interested in Mildred and wanted to get married with her.
So he
Which
did
was
actually marry June Byers in real life. I don't know that it was because that's what his father like pushed her into. I would guess that was made up for the movie. But they did get married in real life.
yeah, it was such a strange plot twist. So like her character with his son, like during those scenes where they're supposed to be connecting as like love interests, were just really hard for me to watch because it didn't seem like genuine or there was like no
Right.
spark there. It was like, what is this? Why do we have this in here? It doesn't make a lot of sense for me and was kind of a waste of time. I get it because of all the cruelty that was like, put on both of them. You're not able to marry him. You all are in love. You're never going to have her, and you're never going to have him at the end of the day. So,
Yeah.
spoiler alert.
Spoiler for people who are trying to decide if they should watch it. And that brings us to what our banner says below. Is this Queen of the Ring movie worth watching, whether you're a new fan or a longtime fan of wrestling? Raymond, you're our guest, so we'll start off with you.
Yeah, I think it is on multiple levels. If you're a casual wrestling fan, it's an entertaining movie to begin with, and really impressive for a $500,000 budget, and that's just insane now. I used to think of when I think of low budget movies that are really good, Chasing Amy is probably my favorite. That was 200,000, but that was like in what, like 2002 or something. And 23 years later or 20 whatever years later, to do a movie on 500,000 is insane. The Iron Claw was a small budget film, but that was, I think it was like 16 or 17 million, the budget for that one. And I think, to me, this is a better movie, Queen of the Ring.
Than Iron Claw.
Yeah. And that I might be biased on that because I was such a fan of the Von Erichs and I know their story really well, whereas Mildred Burke, a lot of her stories I don't know well at all. So the inaccuracies in the Iron Claw really bothered me. Some of the omissions. Yeah, the missing brother that was never in the movie at all, who also died. And some of the changes and some of the timeline truncations really bothered me in Iron Claw. And also the way they looked, like Zac Efron was bigger than what's the chef guy from
right.
Yeah, I know what you're talking to, but
I
yeah,
thought they should have switched
yeah,
character.
Carrie was the bigger one in real life, or the bigger steroid abuser in real life, whereas Kevin had a more natural physique. But in the movie, I think it's because I know so much about the Von Erichs that the inaccuracies and the details bothered me more in that. But even that aside, just what they accomplished for the money they had, I'm pretty blown away by what Queen of the Ring accomplished. I mean, as a movie, it was very inspiring. I left the theater and I'm like, wow, Mildred Burke kicks ass. Like, I want to learn more about her. If you're any kind of a wrestling fan, I think these are important people to know about and learn more about. So I hope it gets people to do that. As far as wrestling movies, it doesn't have a great history. So we have like The Wrestler and Iron Claws being ones that are critically acclaimed. I'd put this up there with them for sure. Yeah. And erase the one with Face from the A-Team with Roddy Piper and the Tonga Kid. That was a really bad movie. But when I was a kid, that was awesome because wrestlers weren't in movies at that time.
That's true. Now we have wrestlers in movies all the time.
Yeah.
Yes.
Especially one that's making lots of movies as a star. Talking to you, Dewey. The Rock, if you're watching this, thank you for watching. But to help out Raymond, Jeremy Allen White is who he was referring to as being
from The Bear.
than Zac Efron. And Chasing Amy came out in 1997, Raymond.
Oh, wow. I thought it was 2000.
Yeah.
I thought it was 2000.
200,000 in 1997.
That's got to be like $1 million plus by now.
But
no?
that was still considered like really low budget for the time, which is insane to me. God, I remember going to that movie in theaters, and I
went to see that, and I went to go see Half Baked. So
I took this Polish waitress who was quite pretty, and she did not understand the movie at all. So,
if you're that Polish waitress that went on a date with Raymond to see Chasing Amy, we'll let you know how to reach him. But Maria, what did is this movie worth watching?
Well, I agree with Raymond's sentiments about the movie. It's just not a sports movie, just not a wrestling movie. It's bold, it's vulnerable, and it actually exceeded the expectations that I had for the movie. It honors women who fight every day in the ring, the workplace, and life, and would definitely tell you to not revisit because you'll be watching this for the first time. Visit this movie. It's definitely worth a watch.
And as for me, besides all the little criticisms that I have with the historical inaccuracies and a couple of things, I actually still enjoyed this movie. I had to put myself in like, hey, stop nitpicking this movie. Don't do it. Don't let it get to you. Because we've come a long way from, I guess, 90 years plus of history has gone since, Mildred and all these other ladies has started their journey to professional wrestling. So, but the matches are very good. There's a lot of matches. I think I counted like 6 or 7 matches, even some of them are truncated. But the last match where it has June Byers versus Mildred is a very well plotted out match, and will remind you of pretty much of the first Rocky match, I believe, of Rocky 1. The match that she has with Clara Mortensen when she goes out and flies west to the NWA in San Francisco, when she has that match with Tony Storm is portraying. That was a very good match as well. And you have little matches here and there, but they're, because they're showing off other characters. But regardless, the action in the matches will keep your attention very good. It probably could have been tightened up a little bit more for me, but regardless, it's only, I think the running times are 2 hours 10 minutes, 2 hours 15 minutes. So go out there and watch it.
I was going to say, Carlos actually had a really good recommendation, and I was like, I'm going to steal this from you. When he said it, he's like, it would be a really good series. And I'm like, it would be a good series because we got to get introduced to so many women that are wrestling during this period of time. And if we're not able to see like these if we're not able to see movies that are like thorough fleshed out with some of these characters, then give us a wrestling series. I think it would be amazing. Some truth, some not truth, maybe some,
I mean, I like it as a movie. I think it works as a movie. And if you want more accuracy, you have Lipstick and Dynamite. So was it such a good, it was hard for me to watch.
It's hard if you,
that's low
fan. Yeah.
So
I mean, I understand it's low budget, but it was, to me, like the interviews were like so chopped up. So back and forth with these different wrestlers. It was hard for me to watch. And
but
I understand
accurate, though, so if that's what you want, there's that. It's definitely rough because it's basically like a fan movie, a fan documentary. Like. Yeah.
Is that what it is? Or
I mean, it got picked up, but
the lady was interested who went around and interviewed the ladies, the first
Okay.
ladies of wrestling.
I was curious what
So,
it was. Okay.
but yeah, with our final thoughts and the
Season.
ratings, yes, I recommend that people go out there and watch it if you have 2 hours and 15 minutes to spare, or if it's playing in your local theater. Because from what I've got, like reports from like people that I know, like our friend Doyle, who's in Philadelphia, it's not playing anywhere near him. He has to drive out uh about an hour away for him to actually go watch this movie, and he's not actually going to go do it. So if you are able to go out and support this movie, if you're a fan of wrestling, if you're wanting to get more stories out there to be told that aren't like terrible, horrible stories like we get in Dark Side of the Ring, if you want, to hear more of inspiring stories like Mildred's and other women of professional wrestling that are mentioned not only in this film, but if you do manage to go out because we've piqued your interest and your curiosity, find Lipstick and Dynamite. I've heard that it's on a particular streaming network that starts with the letter Y and ends with the letter E, but I'm not sure if the people don't want you to watch it that way. You don't have to go and rent it if you could find it, but it's definitely worth a watch. That one's an hour and 40 minutes, but you get a lot more introductions to not only to ladies in this particular movie, but you'll get more introductions to other ladies, and you'll get more story about behind more stories of Mula intertwining with Mildred. You'll get Ida Mae Martinez, other ladies like that, um, and more stories of territories and how it went back then, especially more with Gladys Gillum, who
did not die in her 20s.
Who did not die.
Yeah.
But now it's your turn. So if you watch this movie, let us know. Did the Queen of the Ring hit you like it hit me? What scene stuck out to you or stuck with you? Like that one scene I was talking about. Which part of Mildred's legacy inspired you the most? Let us know. Drop your thoughts in our comments below. We'd love to hear from you.
Yeah. And Raymond, do you have anything that you want to plug?
Yeah, check out my next 2 episodes, which will have Carlos on them. Go to Arpad TV, Arpad Video on YouTube. Just search me on Arpad TV on most social platforms. But next week, we're going to be reviewing season 3 of Invincible. And the week after that, we're going to be talking about season 5 of Harley Quinn. Super excited. Really enjoyed both of these shows and excited to talk more with you about them, Carlos.
Yeah, I can't wait to get into those 2 shows. One was very, 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 very exciting this season, and one I think had some very good highlights, but I think is just treading water. Tune into Raymond's show to find out which one I think it is.
All right.
And as far as for revisiting the Mania, we are trying to narrow down on when we're going to put out the WrestleMania 36 episode. If it is not a live stream, it'll be recorded. So if you have any questions that you want to put in for Maria that you want her to answer for you, if you have any comments, please leave them in the comments. And thank you very much for watching. See ya.
Bye.
Peace.